It took me 26 hours, 3 flights, and a time change of 12 hours to get to my cruise. It was brutal. So how did it all go once there, and do I recommend putting yourself through all of that? Let me start with the very best bits. In case you don't know, it took so long to get there because French Polynesia is in the Pacific, halfway between South America and Australia. It has 118 islands stretching over a staggering 1,200 miles, that's 2,000 kilometers. It's very, very remote. Without a shadow of doubt, one enormous highlight of the cruise was the phenomenal and unique scenery across those islands. I was absolutely blown away by what I saw, with volcanic soaring mountains, lushly covered with vegetation, beautiful coral reefs surrounding most of the islands, powder soft beaches, teeming sea life, and ocean, the color of which is totally mind-blowing. On my Paul Gauguin Society Islands cruise out of Tahiti, I saw Huani, Taha, Bora Bora, and Moorea, and one lasting memory is how undeveloped and pristine all of them were, a stark contrast to the Caribbean islands that I visited on numerous cruises. All had pretty low population. Even the famous iconic Bora Bora has only 10,000 residents. Across the island, there's no big resorts crammed along the beaches. Overwater bungalow resorts are much more common. There aren't even cruise docks on the islands other than at the key embarkation port of Papeete on Tahiti, so we tended to and from the ship on every single island, surrounded by that incredible scenery. But what also really struck me was just how clean it was. There wasn't plastic and rubbish strewn all about. It was spotless. And they were not packed and busy with mass tourism and busy cruise ship calls. More on that later as to why. Another plus of exploring the Society Islands is how close they are to each other, with surprisingly little sailing. For example, from Taha to Bora Bora was only about 3 hours, and about 1.5 hours to sail from Moorea to Papeete. And so there were actually some overnights, which were great because they allowed exploring and appreciating some of the islands in much more depth. This included, for me, Bora Bora, Moorea, and of course Papeete. There is, though, some downsides about all of this to come, but let's keep going on the highs. The second big plus for me was that the best things to do on the island were active, and those overnights meant being able to do multiple activities. Of course, many were water-based, with excursions including snorkeling, scuba diving, catamaran rides, flow riders. One big highlight, for me anyway, was in Bora Bora, where I snorkeled with sharks and rays, obviously not dangerous sharks, and then through an incredible coral garden that was packed with fish. On land, I went on several e-bike tours, like riding through pineapple fields and up to the Belvedere Lookout, which is really high up a mountain on Moorea. I also cycled 27 kilometers right around one of the islands in Huani, and then about 32 kilometers all the way around Bora Bora. There are also great hikes to do. For example, I hiked up Magic Mountain in Moorea. That's the equivalent of about going up something like 55 stories of a building up high. Stunning, incredible views. Even just going to the beach meant snorkeling opportunities because there were reefs, there were rays, there were fish everywhere we went across the islands. One downside was that, unlike other cruising regions I've been to, I quickly discovered if I wanted to self-explore, I needed to plan ahead. I quickly found there were no or very limited taxis, places to spontaneously hire a car or a bike, or tour operators waiting to sell tours and trips when I got off the tender boats. That just didn't happen. So I and others on the trip, if they want to self-explore, found it was best to pre-book something online a day or two before a port to make sure the taxi, the bike, the hire car, or a local tour guide was waiting. I did notice there seemed to be relatively few health and safety rules here when on tour. So unlike other regions where I cruised, I wasn't asked to sign loads of waivers before snorkeling or e-biking, nor was I given or required to wear a life vest when snorkeling and so on. A bit of a surprise. One thing I liked about the islands is that all of the tender boat drop-off spots, there was a local market. And unlike most cruise regions like, say, the Caribbean or Alaska, it was all handmade, handcrafted items, although they were rather costly, a topic I will also return to later. The third real high for me were Port Gauguin's private island and beaches. They were special, secluded, and absolutely stunning places. In Taha, we spent a day on Port Gauguin's private island called Motu Mahana. This is a beautiful little island. We had magnificent barbecue lunch there. We could go kayaking, snorkeling, swimming, or just laze about. The onboard entertainers called Les Gauguins played Polynesian music. They showed how all the coconut tree is used. They ran dancing classes and even how to make a kind of a head garland. The specialness of the day, by the way, was actually added to because one of the guests chose here to propose to their girlfriend, which of course caused lots of excitement. There was also the Port Gauguin private Bora Bora beach, which was stunning and a really beautiful special experience. Now I'll talk about the line itself's pros and cons in a bit, but before that there is a much more general point about the line and the ship. One massive highlight and a must I found is choosing to cruise in French Polynesia on a small ship like I did, and on one that specializes in the area. Now the three main lines with ships based for summer all of the year within French Polynesia are Port Gauguin with 330 passengers, Windstar with Wind Spirit, which has 148, and Star Breeze with 312, and Aranui, a part ship, part freighter, which carries 230 guests. Going on a small ship was best for two key reasons. First, since shutdown, French Polynesia have outlawed megaships coming through the region at all. They also have severely limited the islands that larger ships of up to 2,500 can call on. And if you're coming to the region, of course, you should plan to visit the most iconic island of all, Bora Bora. Now that can only be done on a small ship, as they now allow a maximum of 1,200 passengers per day. Then of course the other benefit of being on a small ship, besides things like easy embarkation, never waiting for lines, always getting a table, no crowds waiting to go off on excursions, crew getting to know your name and your likes, was that the islands did not get swamped by cruise passengers. And as all the islands are tender ports, there was no waiting ever around. It was easy to basically head to and from the ship on a whim. I chose Port Gauguin as they are so intertwined with the region and have been sailing and based here all year round for 25 plus years. Now since 2019 they've become part of the French cruise line Ponant. A highlight was that much of their crew was French Polynesian, and instead of an entertainment team they have that local troupe that I mentioned earlier called Les Gauguins. This group ran daily immersion into the culture with Polynesian language, dance and craft events. They met and greeted us on the islands when we got off the tenders. They put on some local dance shows in the Grand Salon Lounge. They were really busy all the time. Though they did also run the daily bingo on top of all those kind of immersion things as well. Now they probably weren't the slickest entertainment group you're going to find on a cruise line, but it felt authentic, genuine, and it was local. I also liked that Port Gauguin brought other local Polynesian performers on several of the nights. They had a Polynesian themed gala night as well. Another reason I chose Port Gauguin is their ownership, certainly when I went, was also designed very specifically for the region with a very shallow draft, meaning it can maneuver into the islands with reefs all around it, which some of the bigger ships can't. Now that design does have a downside though, because when sailing there was quite a lot of movement, much more than most passengers expected, even when swells were pretty small. There were four other highlights and best things about Port Gauguin for me as well, and these are them. First, it was a rather luxurious and pampering. This is important because this trip was to celebrate being with my partner for 20 years. Although the ship is old, built in 1997, it's been beautifully updated by Ponant. Second, for me, the cabin we booked, a veranda suite. It was a great size for a small ship and had a very comfy feel to it and a decent sized bathroom. Though the regular veranda cabins are a little bit tight, especially when some told me they were traveling, say, with a child or a teen sharing with them. It got a little bit cramped and tight. Third of all, we had amazing food, and also, by the way, there were many inclusions like drinks, Wi-Fi and gratuities. In terms of dining, we had the following choices: La Veranda or La Grill for buffet breakfast and lunch, with lunches themed each day by a different part of the world, of course, including Polynesian. For dinner, we had La Étoile, the main dining room with open-seated dining, or we could book La Veranda, which became a chicer a la carte restaurant, or La Grill on some of the evenings, which became more of a steak and fish kind of menu. All the restaurants, by the way, had a wide vegetarian section on the menus, which was rather surprising. The fourth thing that I liked about Paul Gauguin was the passengers and the diversity. I knew it would be kind of a vibrant, adventurous and active crowd of people. The average age was probably 50s, I would guess, but it was a really wide range from kind of kids right through to 70 and beyond, because there were many multi-generational families, groups of friends, and even a cycling tour group was on board. The nationality mix was really diverse too, with Americans, Canadians, French, Italians, Brazilians, Australians, and Brits. All those groups were well represented. There were, by the way, a few solos, though they do offer low or no solo supplements on some sailings, but there weren't many solos. It's more of a kind of a couples and groups experience. So while these highs made the long trip and jet lag start to seem fine, there were some lows I also had to talk about and consider before making a final call on whether this was all worth it. Before I do that, I wanted to mention that, as I do on all my trips now, I posted 4 video updates during this trip showing what was happening and answering on the go questions posted by my Patreon patrons. To find out more on how to get those exclusive patron videos, updates while I'm on upcoming trips, go to patreon.com/tipsfortravelers. Of course, one key downside is the one I've touched on. With the time it takes to get there and the time difference, the struggle to make sure jet lag does not negatively affect the experience is a big one. Now, a key consideration when most of those French Polynesian cruises are 7 nights long. While it's 26 hours traveling and 12-hour time difference from Europe, that's the most extreme, I guess, it's still at least 15 hours from East Coast USA with a 7-hour time difference. It's an 8 to 9 hour flight from the West Coast and a 3-hour time difference. So a downside I found is I really needed to build in time before and afterwards to make sure that I was in the zone, could appreciate it, see as much as possible, and importantly be ready for the very busy schedule once on the cruise. This is key because it's likely to be a once in a lifetime trip and you need to pack so much in. You need to be on the ball and ready. Now I'm glad that I built in pre-stays in Papeete and a post-cruise stay in Bora Bora for that reason. I wish I'd considered, instead of doing the classic 7-night Society Islands cruise, was doing one of the 10 to 14 night cruises that go further afield to the Tuamotus and the Marquesas Islands to see more. Maybe this next downside should have been the first, as it's huge. The cost. First, it's really expensive to even get there with limited flight options. So probably it's got to be like Air Tahiti Nui or Air France if you're coming out of Paris in Europe, via Los Angeles, or now also via Seattle for Air Tahiti Nui. United flies there from San Francisco. But airline choices are very, very limited. And of course, because of that and the distance, it's really costly. So for example, looking at June next year, I went in June, an economy flight would cost $2,600. That's about £2,000 from Europe, $6,000, £4,700 in business. From the West Coast, it's at least $1,600 return in economy and about $3,600 in business. The cruises are also crazy expensive, even considering those inclusions. For example, repeating my 7-night Paul Gauguin cruise in June next year, in the cheapest option, a porthole only cabin, will cost at least $9,000 for a couple for 7 nights. That's $640, £500 per person per night. For the comparison, Windstar in their porthole cabin with similar all-inclusive rate would be around $7,000 for a week for a couple. That's $500, £400 per person per day. So really, really expensive. The excursions are extra and pricey. The snorkel tour, for example, I mentioned earlier in Bora Bora, was $145 per person. And out and about, things are expensive too. I was paying like at least $6 for a can of Coke. In the craft market, prices were hefty. Some simple handcraft wooden boxes we liked were going for $200. Bearing in mind both of those downsides, I was very aware that weather could ruin it all, as having cloudy, wet and windy days would not be great, because that would mean activities were cancelled. They would be less enjoyable, and spending all that money to go to a rainy place, not great. French Polynesia is in the tropics, so rain and wind are common. That's why, although I could go any time of the year, I went in June. June to September is considered the best time to visit because it's the driest and the temperatures aren't too warm, but by their definition, not too warm is 25 to 28 degrees Celsius. That's about 77 to 82 degrees in Fahrenheit. The rainy season, by the way, is from November to April. That's a peak rainy season, and I really didn't want to spend all that money and all that time to go in the rainy season. We actually had one day wiped out by massive rainstorms in Bora Bora, and if we didn't have that post day to enjoy it, I would actually felt pretty aggrieved. Although, by the way, usually it doesn't rain for long periods of time, but if, like me, you want to get the most of your money, I recommend stick to what is the rather short 4-month prime season. So considering the best and the worst sides of cruising French Polynesia, did I regret it? Well, if I could get the money together, I would actually go again. But as I said, I would do it maybe a little bit differently, like the longer cruises going beyond the Society Islands, or try that Aranui half ship, half freighter, which goes to some of the more remote islands. However, if this is a bucket list cruise isn't appealing to you, why don't you watch this video where I count down what I think are the 11 must-do cruises in the world. And actually, there you'll also find out where French Polynesia ranks in that ranking. See you over there.